Recording in progress.
Okay, we've rung the bell, so I think we're ready to get started. There may be a few more people coming in, but thank you all for your presence here. I'm delighted to introduce to you Sarah Augustine. I have read one of her books, The Land Is Not Empty. She co-wrote another one. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it right now, but she does have those books back on the table if you're interested in purchasing one. But meanwhile, she's here to tell us a little bit about her work, so welcome, Sarah.
Just got to make sure the rooms.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for making me welcome. What a beautiful service. It was just lovely to be able to share in communion with you all at your open table. Thank you for including me. So I'm Sarah Augustine. I'm a Tewa descendant. That's what I say. It's kind of an interesting process when you're Indigenous like me. The Tewa descendant is a political designation, which is to say I'm Tewa all the way as a race. My race is I'm Indigenous in Tewa. But the way tribes work as a result of a federal law is to say, for me to claim to be Tewa, I would have to be enrolled. And I'm not enrolled because of the diaspora that occurred as a result of the Doctrine of Discovery. So while I grew up in New Mexico, which is the homeland of my people, and I happen to be Indigenous, I don't have that racial affiliation.
You're only partially on the camera.
Yeah, it's kind of like a strange shot of my midsection there. So there, at least now my face is on the screen. Yeah, so I mean, it's a complicated thing to be Indigenous in the United States, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came to be part of this work, Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery. And before I get into all that, and I'm anxious to share with you and tell you all about my story, I want to just acknowledge the siege that's happening in Minneapolis right now.
Yes.
And also acknowledge the great violence occurring in Venezuela as well.
Yes.
And I want to say that, you know, what's happening in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, which is the original homeland of the Dakota people and also home to many Ojibwe as well. We are participating, we the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery are participating in solidarity work in Minneapolis itself. And when we talk about solidarity, we mean two things by that. We don't mean hopes and prayers. We don't mean heart post you make on social media. We mean two things by that. Human capacity, which means energy, staff energy, hands, boots on the ground, and money. That's what we say. When we join in solidarity, we put our effort next to the bodies of the people whose bodies are threatened. That's what we do in the coalition. And that is, from our point of view, true solidarity, putting our bodies next to the bodies of the people who are suffering. And I wanted to start there because I think it's impossible to talk about justice and peace without beginning, in this day, in this moment, without talking about what's happening in Minneapolis. The fact that a woman in her car was shot and killed by a ICE agent, federal agent, and that is now being construed as she was in some way participating in domestic violence. She was an ICE observer, and as a person whose life has been framed by colonization, the process of colonization, it's impossible for me to witness that and not find common cause and say, here's the next manifestation of this process of colonization. So I'm going to talk about what the doctrine of discovery is for a minute. Have you heard of that, the doctrine of discovery? Some of you probably have. A lot of people kind of give you sort of a flimmy-flammy definition of what it is. I'm going to tell you what it is in fact. Bossy know-it-all here. The doctrine of discovery is a body of law and policy that was adopted by the Supreme Court in the United States in 1823. It is the law of the land today, and it frames every institution in the United States. I'm going to say that again. The doctrine of discovery is a body of law and policy adopted by our Supreme Court in 1823. It is the law in the United States. It's not some ancient Catholic edict, okay? It is the law today. It is our policy today. It absolutely has framed my life experience as an Indigenous person. I wrote a book about it called The Land Is Not Empty, and I can talk more about that if you're interested. But my life experience growing up as what the United Nations calls a refugee in place, excluded from my own homeland, stripped of any wealth that is part of that homeland, absolutely discriminated against in this country, which is the country of my birth. Our people say we've been on the land that we're on for 30,000 years. Can we talk about that for a minute? 30,000 years we've been there. Our ancestors. Do you know how long we've had written language? 10,000. Have you heard of the Dene, the Navajo people? My people say those are the newcomers, 7,000 years. We've had Christianity 2,000 years. Think of that. We've been there a long time. And as a refugee in place, excluded from those lands as a process of U.S. policy towards Indigenous people. One of the founding policies of the United States government towards all Indigenous people is the policy of removal. Have you heard of that? Some of you may have heard of removal. This is the idea of draining the East Coast, all the Indigenous people out of the East to the west of the Mississippi. That's kind of the first phase of colonization and the doctrine of discovery. Imagine this. We are now, I'm not, but collectively as a nation, identifying who now will be removed. How can I not see that as an unfolding process of the doctrine of discovery? New people who are identified, who are going to be removed in the full weight and authority, with the full weight and authority of the strongest, most powerful empire the world has ever known. We are absolutely standing with the people in Minneapolis and with people who are being targeted across the United States as they suffer the impact of the doctrine of discovery, this body of law and policy that defines reality for Indigenous and vulnerable peoples today, in this day. Can you imagine who else it defines reality for, this body of law and policy? I'll tell you a bit about what it says. It defines who is allowed to own land and improve land, who is allowed to accumulate wealth. Who do you suppose this policy also defines reality for? Anybody here? What's that? Okay, immigrants, but anybody here own property? Anybody in this room own property? Anybody in this room have a relative, a person that came before you, an ancestor that entered the country after 1924? I mean, before 1924? The doctrine of discovery is for you. It absolutely frames responsibility. It absolutely frames reality for you. Because the doctrine of discovery has said you will have land, wealth, power, and my people will not. I'm going to tell you a little more story about my people, the Tewa people. I'm from the Nambe Pueblo originally, although I've never lived there. That is the homeland of my people. I was removed as a matter of a diaspora, as I mentioned before. The homeland of my people, we say, is a holy place. It's holy because the soil of that place is made up of the bodies of our ancestors. And I want to say a little more about what I mean by that. Our human ancestors, sure, who lived, walked, and died there for tens of thousands of years. But also the bodies of the four-leggeds and the winged ones, the insect people, all the beings, including what I've been taught to call the standing green nation, community of plants and trees. The soil is made of the remains of all of that. So when we go back there, and I take my daughter there, we take our shoes off and our moccasins off and acknowledge that that is a sacred place. That sacred place was annexed by the federal government in the 1940s by executive order for the purpose of developing the atom bomb. The bomb that was developed to end World War II, they say. And I want to be really clear about what that has meant for my people, because before it was ever detonated on a foreign soil, it was detonated on our homelands 11 times. There were experimental detonations on our homeland 11 times before a bomb was ever dropped on foreign shores. So that community, my community, the community of my people, the soil is contaminated, the water is contaminated, the bodies of my kin are contaminated. That's not going to go away in a generation or in 10 generations. That is the destruction that has come to the lands of my people, those precious lands, as a result of the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery that has empowered the federal government to own all of our land. Many people believe, on reservations, indigenous people own that land. No, those lands are owned by the federal government in trust for indigenous peoples, which is to say they can exercise, complete domination over those lands according to what is called the security and prosperity of our nation. So this is the way in which territory within the Navajo Nation has been earmarked as a zone for extraction, so that the same chemicals can be drawn out of the earth to create atomic power. Which is to say that the lands and the soils and the waters of the Dene people are likewise contaminated for the purpose of atom bombs. This entire region. So when I say we were spread or we were scattered by a diaspora, this is for a couple of different reasons. To mine uranium, to experiment on our homelands, which are considered to be empty, according to the doctrine of discovery, those lands where nobody, that said, it's the middle of the desert, nobody's there but Indians, right? So it's empty, no people live there, only Indians live there, right? So while we have been removed for the purpose of resource extraction, and that is a process that is speeding up, not slowing down, for the purpose of extracting resources like lithium and copper across Native America to build green energy solutions, including electric cars. Indigenous lands like Thacker Pass and like Oak Flat are being militarized and exploited today so that the beneficiaries of the doctrine of discovery can have all the things that our government has decided that you need, including electric cars and a green energy solution. But by far the most effective way to remove us from our lands has been child removal. You've heard about boarding schools and how boarding schools worked. So I want you to think about this for a minute. Boarding schools were framed as mission. Hey, yeah, it's the greatest fundraising expedition of the Church in the United States ever was for boarding schools. So imagine armies of missionaries coming to Native America to incarcerate our children. You know, I'm sure that the boarding school policy was executed by the Department of War in the United States, because the purpose was to halt resistance of indigenous peoples to the process of colonization. But that's not all. I want to tell you this final tidbit. As the boarding school era was winding down, in 1970, Congress, the U.S. Congress, passed a Family Planning Act that singled out indigenous families and made a mandate to involuntarily sterilize indigenous women. So between 1970 and 1979, this is according to the federal records, the records of our government, between 1.25% of all indigenous women were sterilized at that time. So if you think for a moment that the doctrine of discovery was not designed to annihilate our people, I want to tell you that the community that I'm from, the Pueblos that I'm from, are shrinking in size with every generation and not growing. And that is as a policy by the most powerful empire the world has ever known. So, it's interesting. I was talking about this the other day. Somebody was asking me, gosh, you know, Sarah, how did the coalition to dismantle the doctrine of discovery come about? I want to tell you how. A lifetime of suffering and oppression. And as an adult, going to the Guiana Shield in South America and encountering other indigenous people with the same issues that we have. The same removal, the same contamination of homelands, the same incarceration of children. It was like, light bulb. This is something that's happening everywhere, and it has to stop. I've been to every major decision-making body that there is, including the United Nations. I don't mean I went to the United Nations once. Over and over and over again for the better part of 2 decades. Every single mechanism, imploring every single mechanism there to stand up for my people who are being eradicated from the surface of the earth. But not just the United Nations. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, where I brought a case and testified. The World Health Organization, which has HIAP, Health and All Policies, are also an international body. The Inter-American Development Bank, which is the international financial mechanism within this hemisphere for all of these economic development projects that absolutely eradicate my people from the surface of the earth, and many, many others. The Red Cross, International Red Cross, rallying all these people in the world. Help us, because we are being eradicated. There's a massive movement to destroy us from the surface of the earth. And do you want to know what these bodies said to me? One after the other after the other? That's totally legal. It's within our legal framework. Oh, did you know the UN Charter was based on the doctrine of discovery? Oh, yes, absolutely. All these nations established their sovereignty based on the doctrine of discovery. And it's not illegal. It's absolutely legal. There's nothing that's considered to be amiss in the world. Why? Because the world's resources are being drained from my people, and we are being destroyed so that the beneficiaries of the doctrine of discovery can have whatever they want. That's why and how. So we are ensnared, friends, in this web, you and me. It's not something that happened in ancient times. A lot of people are saying, oh yeah, the doctrine of discovery that happened, 500 years ago. Catholics don't even know about it. What difference does it make whether Catholics know about it? The doctrine of discovery is the law today. Okay, so I created this coalition called the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery because when it occurred to me that the doctrine of discovery is baked into the law and it's legal, just like slavery was one time baked into the law, just like segregation was one time baked into the law. You know, and people say, well, don't worry about it. It's legal. It must be right. Well, I'm telling you, it's destroying my people. So I thought, well, who am I going to turn to? You know, I came after decades of seeking anyone, any voice to join us and help. I said, you know who I'm going to reach out to? I'm going to reach out to the church. Those are also my people. And I'm going to ask the institutions who have the moral authority to do something about it, to intervene. And that's why I'm here with you today. The doctrine of discovery is a body of law and policy that was created by the Christian church to benefit the Christian church. So our tagline in the coalition is, this coalition of who? Coalition of Christians across the United States and Canada. Christians that join together with land and water protectors, putting our bodies next to the bodies of Indigenous and vulnerable communities who are suffering now as a result of the doctrine of discovery. We as Christians, our tagline says, that we are resisting in the name of Christ that which has been done in the name of Christ. It was done in the name of Christ, and those of us who are Jesus followers are now rising up to resist it. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our coalition. And so why did we form? How did we form? That's kind of my few-minute discussion about that. And now I'll tell you about who we are and what we do. We have a multi-generational vision, and I want to be clear about that. When I say we're the coalition to dismantle the doctrine of discovery, that's not a metaphor for us. We are actively seeking to dismantle the doctrine of discovery. That means dismantling the law and policy that leads to the eradication of my people. So I want to talk about what that means. It's the same as trying to dismantle slavery. Dismantle segregation. So I want to ask you this. Did segregation come to an end because Christians across the country were joining book groups? What had to happen for segregation to come to an end?
They showed up and confronted people.
Those are all tactics. What had to happen for segregation to come to an end?
People's hearts had to change.
Those are also great things. Those are tactics. What had to change in this country for segregation to be no more? The law had to change. The law had to change. These are all tactics you're saying, which are really important, great tactics to change the law that said that segregation was legal, separate but equal, right? That had to be dismantled, and that's what we're doing too. We're seeking to change the law. Keep in mind, it's not one law. It's a paradigm. It's a body of law and policy. How do you change paradigms? How do you change paradigms of law and policy? So let's think about slavery as a paradigm, which it was, a legal doctrine. Did you know the doctrine of discovery, that name, Doctrine of Discovery, it was named by our Supreme Court, the Discovery Doctrine. It's not a religious doctrine, although it was based on that. It's a legal doctrine. To dismantle that, we believe we can do it in 100 years. We think it'll take us 100 years. So we're actively working now in the first phase of a movement to bring an end to this doctrine, this legal doctrine of colonization. So our vision has to be multi-generational because we know it's going to take us at least 3 generations. So right now I'm saying, all right, our first, as we get to know each other a little better, I'll show you our organizing strategy, but not today. Our first big national legislation is set for 2050. And we're actively organizing day by day for that. But we know that's why we're spending so much time with people between the ages of 15 and 29. Because when they're our age, they're going to see through the first national legislation. Right? What do we do now to support them? That's what a multi-generational vision is all about. Anyway, I'm going to click through some slides here. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about indigenous cosmology. This is the cosmology that I come out of. What I've learned from my elders is that we live in a closed system of mutual dependence. So this kind of language is in the second book, which is called So We and Our Children May Live. I wrote that with my co-founder, Sheri Hostetler, a Mennonite pastor. So what is a closed system of mutual dependence? So let's think about this for a second. In my tradition, the Tewa tradition, what we're doing right now, you and me, we call this a sacrament. What are we doing? We're breathing. We're all breathing in the same space. So you're breathing my breath and I'm breathing your breath. And we say, this is important what we're doing here. I'm alive, you're alive, we're sharing this breath together, and sharing the breath itself is a sacrament. And so when we live in a closed system of mutual dependence, we recognize that the life support systems of Earth are limited, and that in this system, everything I do as an Indigenous woman or as a human being or as a being alive in this earth, everything I do matters and it impacts all the other beings in the system. And I'm not the center. Oof. Who's at the center then? Who is the center? Is it the king? Is it the emperor? In a web, there is no center, right? We are in a web of mutuality. So when I say a closed system, that means no new resources in and we can't send anything out. All the toxic waste we're developing on my homeland in New Mexico and Arizona and Utah and so on, that's all stays here with us. There's nowhere for it to go, right? It's a closed system. And also the air that we have is all there is. And that's not bad. We have life support systems here to cleanse the air, to cleanse the water, to cleanse the soil, right? We have a soil cycle and an air cycle and a water cycle. But what we have here is what there is. We don't get new soil. We can't truck it in from Home Depot from another planet. We don't get to make new water. I mean, think about this. The water we have, the Yakima people, I lived among the Yakima for about 18 years in central Washington. And before every meal, they hold up a little bit of water and they drink it and they say, "Shush," which is water is life, acknowledging the connection that we have with water. And think about this: the water that you're drinking, that little bit, or this coffee that you all shared with me this morning, those are the same water molecules from the very beginning of creation. So think about how many times these water molecules have passed through a bird. Right? It's the same old water. It just keeps being cycled through the cycle, and we don't get to have. I mean, soil is so precious to us, and honestly, our scientists in this world don't fully even understand how soil works, but we depend on it in order to live. We need it, and so my elders have taught me we live in a closed system of mutual dependence. What I do impacts every other. But that's not what I learned in school, in the dominant culture in the U.S. here. I went to public school, but also university then, and a ridiculous 11 years of postgraduate education. I don't know why anybody needs that, but anyway, I got that. And what I learned in those systems is that progress is linear in time. So we accumulate knowledge and we progress. We were worse off over here, and the more time goes by, we get better. And that's evidenced by accumulation. So I'm making progress by accumulating wealth. We're making progress by accumulating technology. Like, accumulation is the purpose. And in this view of reality, the earth is a raw set of resources to extract in service to progress. So we can just take whatever we want and extract it so that we can have progress. And we value in success wealth and power, and most importantly, security. I think a lot of people I talk to say, well, I don't have any lust for wealth or power, but I think here we really believe that security is worth it to destroy all kinds of stuff in order for us to have security in our lifetime. An Indigenous worldview is really different from that. It says that you're born and you live, and you want to walk gently on the earth so that when you die, there's no trace of you. Because accumulation is considered, kind of a heresy. Among the Yakima people, when a person dies, what happens is there's an event, like a service, and everything that they own is given away. Everything. Every pot, every pan, every dish, everything, every stitch of clothing is given away back to the community, because the idea is I come into the world naked, I leave the same way. These resources that I happen to have are not meant for me to have forever, because I am a being of limited time. So I'm going to give, all the stuff that I have goes back to the community, right? So, that's shocking to many people. Can you imagine? But that's the way many Indigenous communities live. So extraction, this idea of extracting resources and labor, is rooted in the concept of dominion or domination. And it is justified. We justify it by saying we need these things in order for our economy to grow. So we're gonna continue to grow our economy, and it's too bad, that's just the way it is. To make an omelet, a few eggs must be broken. Well, I want to tell you, as one of those eggs, it's unpleasant on the other end. More importantly, extraction threatens every system of life on the earth, because extraction is the wholesale pollution of air, water, and soil. So we kind of have this understanding of technological solutions. We can come up with technology that will save us. And I wrote a book about that too, and it's called So We and Our Children May Live. It's following Jesus and resisting climate change. And I want to just tell you a puzzle. For me, this is really a puzzle. It's like, you hear, our problem is, climate change is happening because we have too many cars. Like, there's too much carbon emissions. So I want to ask you all, if this gives you a chuckle too, that the solution to too many cars is more cars. Yeah, we have too many cars. So let's get rid of all the old cars and make all new cars to solve the problem. Man, it's kind of a crazy idea, isn't it? So, and that is ground in this idea of individualism, isn't it? That, what can I do to help with climate change? I'm going to recycle. Friends, we cannot recycle our way out of climate change. Even buying an electric car is not going to get us out of climate change. In fact, there is no individual action you can do. We have to work collectively. So let me give you an example of this. Do you guys remember when everyone smoked? Do you remember that? Yeah. So and do you remember, like, you could smoke at the airport? There was like a smoking area in the airport. You could smoke in the hospital. There was like a smoking room. Like, you could smoke anywhere. You could smoke on an airplane. Yeah, and then it was all over TV and the movies and everything. And then suddenly, no one smoked. Have you noticed that? Like, if you looked around and said, I barely know anyone who smokes. I remember looking around thinking, gosh, everyone I know smokes. And now I don't think I even know one person that smokes. Do you know how that happened? Was it because a lot of people are like, I'm having a conversion moment in my life and I think I don't want to smoke anymore? No, there was a collective action to make smoking harder. First of all, a pack of cigarettes when I was growing up, $2 a pack. Anybody know what it is now? It's like 15.
7 or 8.
No, 15. $15. massively taxed. Tobacco is massively taxed. That was as a result of a lawsuit, class action lawsuit. All the people who were dying as a result of it. And there were all of these laws passed to say you can't even smoke within 30 feet of a hospital. I don't know if any of you smokers out there, you don't have to say you are if you are. I feel you. But the fact is, it's hard. You can't smoke anywhere anymore. You pretty much have to smoke at home, and that's pretty much it. And even then, your smoke alarm is going to be going off. There's like a corner in your backyard where you're allowed to stand there and smoke, right? Like, it's harder. It's harder. This is a function of collective action. Policy put in place to make a public good possible. And that's what we're talking about in the coalition. We have to work collectively for policy outcomes that will serve us. We have to step out of this idea of individualism, thinking that our individual actions are going to save us. And this is another thing I want to say to you too. A lot of people say, well, I boycott this or I boycott that. And friends, I want you to hear this from me. You probably forget everything I say later, but remember this one. This is important. You are an eternal spirit being. You are an eternal spirit being. You are a being created with the breath of God. You are not a consumer. That is not your identity in this world. You are not a consumer. That is not what you are. That is not how you make things happen in this world, is as a consumer. No, reject that. That's based on the idea of individualism. It's not true. You're here in the body, in the collective. Together we can change the world. My people say this. Each one of us is imbued with the Spirit, with the power of a star. That's also not a metaphor. So I want you to think about this. What star do we know best? The sun? Yeah, the sun. Yeah. That star has the power to fuel this entire planet. And your spirit within you is as powerful as that. We have the opportunity to awaken that spirit and blast loving kindness to the universe and insist on something more than this. And friends, I want to tell you, you didn't create these systems that we live with. I didn't create them either. They're before our time, right? But we are as smart and creative as the ones who went before us. They're not smarter than us. They're not more creative than us. We are alive now. It's so interesting. I remember as a kid saying, wow, slavery, it wouldn't happen now. We wouldn't let it happen now. Well, yeah, we're living with this now. And we have the opportunity to change it. We can, we must. In the vision of the dominant culture, competition is required to get one's needs met. Did you grow up hearing that? Look, don't be naive. You got to live in the real world. You got to do what you got to do to get ahead. Can you look just to the left for just a minute and look to the right? That's who you're supposed to get ahead of, friends. It's not like some big, vague get ahead. These are the people you're expected to best them for your own self-interest. That's crazy. That is absolutely counter to the message, the radical message of Jesus. I'm going to skip this one. I already went on and on about what the doctrine is. Okay, so in the coalition, we affirm decolonization as a concrete process and a way of expressing solidarity with Indigenous peoples. And we practice decolonization at every level. And these practices help us resist the colonial norms of perpetual growth, accumulation, and extractive logic. Decolonization is climate justice. And climate justice is decolonization. I was talking with a few of you earlier about how sometimes it happens that environmentalists and Indigenous rights activists collide. It's like, why can't we all be on the same side? And I want to tell you, it's because of this. If climate justice is not focused on decolonization, it will fail. Just like our new green economy is destined to fail because it's predicated on the assumption of extraction and domination. Ooh, I have a story about that, but I'm running out of time. I better keep clicking away here. Okay, so decolonization, it's not symbolic and it's not a metaphor. I started out by telling you, for us, when we stand in solidarity, when we put our bodies next to the bodies of those who are suffering, we put two things out there in the universe. Our human energy, which means staff. We put staff in place. We have staff on the ground in Minneapolis right now. And money. Those are the two things we do. We say, okay, we don't know everything about what to do in Minneapolis, but we're going to join together with those people who are providing relief here, with those people who are standing for justice here, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is and infuse these networks with the support they need to do justice here in a concrete way. So decolonization is the relinquishment of a subjugated people. I'm going to say that again. Decolonization is the relinquishment of a subjugated people. First, acknowledging there are people today subjugated, my people, and people who are coming from foreign shores, subjugated, and releasing control of those. It means identifying and challenging and restructuring assumptions, ideas, values, systems, and practices that reflect a colonizer's dominating influence. We support sovereignty for Indigenous people, land return, and also decolonizing Christianity, interrogating our own traditions, faiths, modes of worship, to take out of it the assumption of racial supremacy and Christian supremacy. We could have a long conversation about land return. You're going to have to invite me back. But I got to tell you, most often land return is not like, hey, we want all the land. You know, there's 330 souls in this country. Indigenous peoples have priorities about what lands they would specifically like returned. And so I wanted to say, your individual home is not at threat at this moment. And I don't think anybody's asking for that, but it would be nice if our traditional territories, including our reservations, if we had possession of those lands. Did you know on the Wind River Reservation in Montana, the single largest owner of property there is the Episcopal Church? And they're not alone. I mean, and I don't mean just the Episcopal Church. Churches hold the majority of property all over the world in Indian country, in indigenous lands. That's right, because there were policies put in place for church ministers to strip us of our land and resources. Think about this. We're talking starting in 1870 in this country. Think about how those monies from 1870 have been sitting in trust and accumulating compounding interest since then. Well, my people have some of the lowest life expectancies on earth. Did you know that our life expectancy is 20 years lower than the average white person? Did you know that we have the highest infant mortality rate? Did you know that we commit suicide 7 times more frequently than white people in the state of Washington? Did you know that in the Yakima Reservation, suicide is it is the leading cause of death for people between the ages of 11 and 19? So we practice this 2-tiered approach of active decolonization. We partner in a co-creator relationship with Indigenous peoples, which is to say we work with Indigenous land and water protectors as they define their movements and their purpose and outcomes, and we recruit and train Christians to follow that. That's what we do. We bring Christians along to support those interests. And we also, in a second tier, take responsibility for laws and policies that were created to serve us. And we work on dismantling those without needing permission or leadership from anyone else. We're the world expert in that, and we know how to do that. So we seek to engage a 100-year vision to dismantle the doctrine of discovery and to seek climate justice. And we do all kinds of things. There are a few examples here. We're actually in this process of trying to reverse mission, which is to say we are trying to recruit mission agencies to help us identify missionaries, to proselytize to corporate leaders, leaders of corporations, mining companies, and leaders.
Because I got to tell you, from my point of view and where I sit, the immortal souls of my people and other indigenous people across the world are not at risk. But you want to know whose souls are at risk? Well, the people who are holding the levers of colonization and legislating death for us all. Yeah, so we're like, hey, we should care about that as a Christian church. We should be sending missionaries to help those people stop doing that. We live and work together in community. I really have no more time here because I'd love to hear from you and hear your comments and questions. But what we do is we organize communities like this one, congregations across the United States and Canada, to join us in our campaigns. And so we live and work together in community. This is not an individual action. We're not recruiting individuals. We actually work together in communities because we know that this work is long, 100 years at least. We're actually down to 95. We've been at this plan for 5 years about. We know the work is long, and we need support. So we actually accompany communities in training. We have organizers to resource people, to organize and get people together and learn how to do stuff. We want to work together with you. So one of the questions as I was thinking and preparing to come here was, what can we do as a congregation? I want to tell you, what you can do is join us, because we want you and we need you. I think it's not too much to say, if you forgive me, I hope it's okay for me to say that it seems your congregation is aging. Is that true? Yeah. Like many congregations across the country. So one of the things we're really working on is eldering and creating an eldering program so that elders are able to identify and mentor younger people to come along. That's a huge thing that we need, and we're working with elders, with Indigenous elders, to partner with our elders from the dominant culture to really create this movement of bringing up younger people. And we're not asking those younger people to do anything. We understand that in our interpersonal relationships as elders elder younger people, that those people are then going out into the world. And that is bringing the spirit of life, the Spirit of God, across all spaces, and that's what leads to meaningful change. Yeah. So there is a place for all of us in this movement. We work collectively, individually, interpersonally, and at the systems level. And that is good news. Thank you. Thank you. I wonder if there are questions or comments. And if someone would be willing to take this mic around.
Turned on here. So hold your ears and start squealing. So I have to turn it up.
Sure.
So any questions?
I know that in the U.S., the second largest property owner after the federal government is the church. But you said that the Episcopal Church owns part of a reservation? Is that the case? I mean, is the church the biggest owner in reservation lands?
Often. But I was talking about the Wind River Reservation because I'm working there and I know a little about the details of that. But I want to be really clear that in every reservation is owned by somebody other than Indigenous people. So the Allotment Act, which is the Dawes Act, which happened in 1883, what happened there was that the federal government said these reservation lands are rich in resources, we want to have access to those. And so what we want to do is break collective ownership of land. So they created allotments. Every person who was named, who was alive at that time, got an allotment. Here in Central Washington and Yakima lands, every I think they were only males, got 40 acres. And then the rest was sold as surplus. And so that means settlers came in and settled right on the reservation. So the primary landowners, who own private property on the reservation in Yakima lands are white settlers, and primarily corporate farms in that context. But in the Wind River context, the largest landowner is the Episcopal Church. But in many places, it's church and clergy who own that property. I have to say the Episcopal Church has a special place because they were part of the architects for the boarding school system and also for allotment, because they were land and railroad barons. But they're not alone. The Methodist Church, United Methodist Church here in the Pacific region, I'm working with Alan Buck, and we have teams of church volunteers that are investigating the true history of our own missionaries that settled within Washington state, to debunk the myths that we've told ourselves for years and years that missionaries came with good news, when in fact these missionaries were primarily land barons. They were coming to annex lands across the state and built relationships. Many of them were in government, or they built relationships with government entities in order to be gifted large swaths of land. So we have to change the narrative about what occurred, because so many of us have been told our whole lives that this was good news that we were bringing to the savages, when in fact it was theft, wholesale theft, which has implications and impact in this day.
Going back to the Yakima Reservation, where we lived in Zilla, which is across the river from the reservation.
Yeah.
I did volunteer work in Toppenish.
Oh,
We don't even have to mention about the stand down or stand up committee in Toppenish, what they're trying to do. Are you familiar with that one? It's sickening. The city of Toppenish is governed by white people who wanted to put a prison there, who wants to do everything there that they want to do without asking the tribe's permission. And there's a big fight between the tribe and the city government, which is only 5% of the population.
yeah, that's right. And so in the Yakima context in particular, certainly the majority of people that live on the reservation are non-native. And the reason that this is able to happen is because on reservation land that's governed by the federal government, and there is no state sovereignty there. So all kinds of horrible things can happen on a reservation because state laws don't apply there. So often reservations, including the Yakima Nation, are dumping grounds for toxic waste. And private property owners are able to truck in large quantities of waste that completely, the Yakima, what's going on in Yakima lands is so sad too, given that that's also a population shrinking and the low life expectancy. In traditional culture, it's the age 50 is considered to be an elder now. But most of us in the United States, most of us Indigenous people don't live much older than 60. And that's as a result of living in contaminated lands under harsh repression for all of our lives. Now, I got to be honest with you. I have a chronic disease. I have multiple sclerosis. And I work with Indigenous women all across the nation, Indigenous leaders. And it's kind of interesting, over the years, I'm watching our bodies fall apart. I'm 52, and I'm watching other leaders like me who have created movements whose health is failing on across all these dimensions. And that's what happens when you live your entire life in an embattled context. So it's interesting. Periodically, I have friends who say to me, Sarah, you have poor work-life balance. You need to take care of yourself. You need to take some more time off. It's like, well, yeah. Someday when my people are free.
How can we help?
Yeah, well, I'm dying to tell you that. So in the short term, if you are so motivated and you are moved by what's going on in Minneapolis, you can go to our website, dismantlediscovery.org. You can donate specifically to, you can put a little note in there. There's probably a drop-down option for Minneapolis. Those dollars don't go, there's no administrative fee on them, nothing. They go directly to communities in Minneapolis. And we do a lot of things like this because for us, We're not trying to get rich and famous. We're trying to save the lives of people. Our dollars go directly to where they're meant to go. So if that's something you're interested in the short term, but that's not really helping us, that's going directly to Minneapolis. If you want to be part of our movement, that will help us and help you. Yeah. Over time, we learn that, this struggle for liberation is a struggle for all of us. I don't know how many of you feel isolated and lonely. I don't know how many of you feel hopeless and despairing. That's kind of going around. And it's a feature of individualism. And when we work together in the collective, that gives us hope. Because our true security, friends, look to your left and right again. That's where our security is. It's not in money. It's not in authoritarian systems. Our hope is in each other. So if you choose to join us, which we'd love, what that really takes is a small group of people. Could be a committee you already have. It could be 2 or 3 people who are ready to form a committee. And our organizers will start working with you to figure out here in this community, what might that be like? So some of you maybe know Joey Ager and have worked with him. If you don't know Joey, you should. He's fabulous. He's with the ELCA working on climate resiliency. Climate resilience. Yeah. What's that?
He's been here.
Yeah, he's been here. Joey. So I'm working with Joey right now on a campaign that we're launching in Pierce County, and love for you to participate in that. And keep in mind, as we're forming coalition, we're working for ourselves in place in our own communities, and we're joining this larger work, this 100-year vision for liberation for us all. And so if you should choose to do that, we'd love to get you connected. And one of the parts of being in this little committee of accountability in the beginning is telling the rest of you what's happening in the work, during announcements, in the bulletin, to keep inviting us deeper and deeper into the work. As we discern together, I got to tell you, there aren't 3 easy steps to liberation, friends. But I know that the Spirit in me identifies the Spirit in you. What we have to do, we learn together. We learn it together on the road. And what that means here in Pierce County, or are you guys in Pierce County? I'm sorry to say. Yeah, we're all in Pierce County. Okay. What that means for us here in Pierce County is going to look differently than what it looks like in Minneapolis. But we're going to join our work together into this flow of seeking justice across the nation. And we're in 3 provinces in Canada. We're now beginning the process later this month of identifying a coalition in Canada that is specific to Canada. And of course, we also work in Mexico. We work across North America, particularly with the Maya people in Mexico, as we identify our co-interests for liberation. So if somebody wants to do that, give me a call. You don't have to. I can give you a call, and we'll get organizers beginning to work with you. There's a place for you, and more importantly, we need you, and we want you. Yeah, we want to be in relationship. Well, thank you for your attention. I have a few books in the back if you would like. Happy to sign them.
Actually, I met you once at a friend of Mark Charles too.